Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Becker, and I am an alcoholic. My Tuesday night boys, they look pretty sharp right now. Yeah. I told you, Roger. I got to tell you, this weekend has been something already, hasn't it? You know, when Billy got done, I said to Jason, I said, boy, that's a tough act to follow, huh? You're up next. And I just saw him going down the hall, and he said, good luck. My sobriety date is January 10th, 06. And I'll be ever connected to Pat because of that, because that's the day his mom passed away. And I got to tell you, when Pat got done, I was in the back, and I had my head on my sponsor's shoulder, and I was blowing snot bubbles. I mean, really, I got cracked open. Thank you. Thank you. I do have a sponsor, and unfortunately, he is here tonight, and he does know that he's my sponsor. So if there's anything that you disagree with during this talk, please take it up with him, all right? A couple things I want to get cleared up. I want to thank everybody for coming. The speakers, you've been phenomenal. Where's Megan? She always says phenomenal. There you go. Anyway, thank you for letting me come here. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. You know, once again, these rooms have cracked me open this weekend. And it's just something to see. It's something to watch. And I just love the new people that are here. Thank you for coming. A couple things I want to clear up before we get started, just in case, well, you'll see later on. But I was a couple years sober, and I was taking one of my sponsees to detox so that he could blow, right? And because it was Monday, we were going to my sponsor's house to have a meeting, which she always did on Monday night. And so I pull up in the detox place, and you know, the parking lot is completely full. And so I just pull up and drop him off, right? And what I didn't see was that there was a sheriff's car sitting right there. And Tom went in, came back out, and I'm in handcuffs. You know, and I could tell right at that point, right there, I could see it in his eyes that he no longer wanted what I have. You know what I mean? And I got to go to jail. And see, I'd done a couple 4 steps. I'm probably spouting off in meetings about being rigorously honest. I'm that guy, right? And so I go to jail, and I'm sitting downstairs in the jail, and the guys that were usually go to the jail meetings, the inmates, were marching by, and I'm in handcuffs, and I've been seeing these guys in the jail meetings, so a little bit more humiliation, if you will. And I finally got out of there, and I called my sponsor to tell him why I wasn't at the meeting, and he said, well, Steve, didn't you know that you didn't have a driver's license? And see, I'll be honest, when I look good doing it, but if I don't look too good being honest, then that's a whole different story, right? That's, Anyway, for the next 6 months, I had to have a ride to work. My sponsor would come and pick me up at noon and take me to the noon meeting, and the guys where I work, they're a bunch of tough guys. It's at the Harley shop, and they would say things like, Steve, your date's here. And I had all this stuff going on in California and Arizona and, just all over the place. And I'm trying to clean this stuff up to get my driver's license. And, for us, that's a big deal, right? And so day after day, I would try it, and they would deny me one more time. They'd say, no, you got to clean up the stuff in Arizona, and I'd do that, and then I'd go back to California, and they'd say, no, you got to clean up the stuff in Arizona, and I'd say, I just did that. No, you didn't, and that went on for 6 months. And every day I would get in the car with Scott, and I'd say, they denied me again. And, he's so kind and gentle, He'd say, well, who created this mess? It was me, right? 6 months later, I did finally get my driver's license back. It only cost me $4,600, and so I hang on to my license really tight, you know what I mean? Anyway, one other quick story. I don't know, a couple years sober, maybe 4, I don't know. And I'm in my home group, which is the Early Risers group in Rapid City. We meet Monday through Friday at 6:45 in the morning. And anyway, I'm in there, and this new lady comes in, and her name's Peggy. And every day, Peggy comes in, gets out her knitting, and starts knitting, right? And she starts knitting, and I'm resentment, and she's knit. And you know what, to really make it bad was she'd come in and sit right beside me, you know what I mean? And it was like, can't you see we're trying to save lives here, and you come in here and you're knitting, you know what I mean? What's the deal with that? And knitting, resentment, And every day I'm just building a case against her, and just, how can you do this, right? Well, after a year, she comes in the meeting one day early to sit beside me. And she says, Steve, I've been knitting this blanket for 1 year, and I want to give it to you now. It's got a few mistakes in it, but I made it with love for you. And it's just like God's relationship with us. He knows where the mistakes are, but he made us with love. And it was just like God punched me right in the gut. You know what I mean? You don't know crap, Steve. And that's the truth. The only reason why I told those first 2 stories, because if any time during this talk it looks like I've done this all right, refer back to these first 2 stories, please. Anyway, I get the privilege of talking about 8 and 9 tonight, and this afternoon, I guess it is. And, it's hard to lead up to just start talking about 8 and 9 without a little bit of background. I am that guy, too, that is a hopeless drunk. I'm that guy that, in the end, I'm drinking in the morning. I got to have a drink to have breakfast, and I'm that guy. And, I grew up in Rapid City. Due to I will say, disagreement with the DEA, I ended up in California. And, when I got there, I got a job in Fullerton at Hughes Aircraft. And, my drinking is just out of hand. My dad, well, I just want to back up a little bit. When I was growing up, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I watched my dad be very physical and violent with my mom, and he was an alcoholic. He is an alcoholic. And I said those words, I'm never going to be like him. I'm never going to be like him. But anyway, my dad got me that job at Hughes Aircraft, and back when I came back into his life. And, it was a perfect job for me because all I did was drink. And, I never got in trouble at that job until after I quit drinking. And then I got fired. Because I'm that guy. I'm restless, irritable, and discontented when I don't drink, and I get crazy. So I'd been to treatment a couple times. They put me through that, and I'm the guy that comes out of blackouts running sheets of plywood through the table saw. You know what I mean? And which is not a healthy thing to do, but I'm that guy. I'm that guy that when I take a drink, I don't stop, and I'll drink. Work really got in the way of drinking, so I had to drink at work, and that's not a good deal. Anyway, I think I'd been out of treatment like 6, 7 days, maybe a week, and I decided that maybe I wasn't an alcoholic, and I went to the bar, which is right down the street from the Hughes Aircraft plant, and I started to drink at 6 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, I like to drink 151. That gets you there pretty quick. I'll just say that by 9 o'clock that night, I had just picked up some Coke or something, I don't know, and I was right there at the 91 and the 5 where they meet, and I drove under a semi at 90 miles an hour. And it completely crushed my truck, and I'm laying on the floorboard, and the glass is popping and all that stuff's going on, and it took them a long time to get me out of the truck, and you know, and I made a fatal decision that day. I said, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to drink. This drinking's killing me. And it was almost did, right? And, you know, my life from there on out got way worse. I thought, you guys always said, you know, if you just quit drinking, Steve. Well, it wasn't you guys, it was my family that was saying that. If you just quit drinking, things will be better. If you just quit drinking, there wouldn't be those holes in the walls. If you just quit drinking, we wouldn't have to be so scared of you, right? So I quit drinking, and like I said, my life didn't get better. It really got worse. So I got a new job opportunity. I became a pharmaceutical rep, and that wasn't quite enough, so I became a pharmaceutical manufacturer. And, you know, my life just went downhill, you know, it really did. And, you know, I can't tell you the spiral that I went into. I happened to have a couple children during that time from different mothers, and I love my kids. And you guys know what that's like, to love your kids, right? And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. You know, the disease of alcoholism doesn't care if you're drinking or not. It'll make you miserable, it'll make you restless, irritable, and discontented. And when they wrote that in the doctor's opinion, I think they kind of underscored that a little bit, because I'm insane when I don't drink. And I can try all kinds of other things, but I'm an alcoholic. And when I don't drink, something happens to me. I need that sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks, right? And if I don't get that, I got to have something else. And it never did the job for me. I'm going to share a few things that I'm not proud about. And, you know, and I so appreciate Pat sharing so honestly and open today. And that's what we do up here. You know, I became a monster. And, you know, I was that guy. I was that guy that hurt the people that I loved. And when I don't drink, something happens. You know, in the big book, it's in the 12 and 12, and we're talking about step 8. It says, you know, made a list of all the persons we harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And what kind of harms do we do? And it talks about it in the 12 and 12, where it says, you know, instincts gone astray, where it causes physical, mental, spiritual harm, right? And I did all those. And I remember one time, my kids are in the car, and I'm supposed to be taking them to the wild animal park in Escondido. And, you know, I got a call from the beast, right? And I go in, and I leave my kids in the car for an hour and a half. And when I come out, my daughter's sitting in the front seat, and she looks at me and she says, "Again, Dad? Again? You promised. You promised. What happened?" And I can't explain that. I don't know what happens, right? I'm powerless over this disease, whether I'm drinking or not. It makes my life crazy. One day I'm at work while I still had a job, And 2 sheriffs walk in, and they arrest me for sexually molesting my son. And, you know, when they did that, I was like, you're kidding me, right? Me? Right? And no. And they took me to jail, and, you know, I had to go to court. And right away, I got one of those things, what do we call them in here? Oh, resentment. Because how could she do that to me, right? How could she do that? She knows that I would never do that, blah, 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 blah. And I had to go to court, and, you know, I remember going in front of the judge, and it was a lady judge, and I said, Your Honor, I'm innocent. And she looked at me, and she said, that's what they all say. And it was just like, oh, I'm really screwed here. This is going to be bad. Anyway, the case got dismissed. The only person that I'm thinking about in this whole thing is me, right? Me. I didn't ever think about what it did to my son or Mandy, his mom. You know, I never thought about those things. It was always, what about me? And in the big book, it talks about we made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. And man, I am always making decisions based on self. And guess what? We get hurt. You know, even though the case got dismissed and all that, I couldn't be with my son unless I had a court-appointed person with me. And I hadn't been convicted of anything. And, of course, resentment, right? And, man, that put me down a spiral that took me down a deep rabbit hole. And I could go on and on about the things that have happened and, you know, hitting a new low and doing all those things. But I'll just talk about this, that, you know, in the end, when, you know, I really believe that this is a disease of separation and a disease of perception. And I'll just tell a little story about perception. I went to my dad's house in Upland when he used to live there, and I walk in, and it's a pretty nice house, and my dad has done good in sobriety. In a week or so, my sponsor and my dad, my sponsor will have 33 years, and my dad will have 54. And he's been very active. But anyway, I'm walking into his house, and there's this bird cage, you know, in the room. And in this bird cage, there's a fake bird sitting on the deal, right? Whatever you call that, the branch, whatever it is. And I walk by, and I look at it, and it kind of caught my eye, and I look in there, and there's all these toothpicks sticking in this bird, right? I mean, in all different directions, and, you know, like, wow, that's pretty strange. This is a fake bird, right? So I say to my dad, and please don't tell my dad that I said this during this. But anyway, I said, Dad, what's going on here? He said, well, we can't keep this thing from chirping all the time. And we've been sticking those toothpicks in there trying to get it to shut up, and it just keeps going. And I said, really? So I sat there for a while, and pretty soon, chirp! I went, wow, they're right. And pretty soon, chirp! And then I look up, and about 3 feet above the bird cage is a smoke detector that's got a low battery. And that's my problem. Lack of power, right? Lack of power has always been my dilemma. And, you know, I've been sticking toothpicks in things that have nothing to do with my life, right? And that's me. My perception is messed up. All I think about is me. And I can't see that other people are getting hurt by my actions. And that I'm so selfish and so self-centered that all I can do is think about, what about me? In the end, my life had spiraled so much, and my kids are gone, and my family's gone, and the people that I love are gone, and I haven't called home for years, you know, 5 years at a time, 8 years at a time. I don't call. My family doesn't know if I'm alive or dead. My family's checking the obituaries and that to see if they can see my name in there, because they don't know. And where that life led me, in the end, and this is in Ramona, I'm living in a broken down horse stall in between two chicken ranches, and it's awful. And this is where my life is, and I'm looking, where are my kids? Where's my resolve? Where are all these things that, where is it? I'm alone, I'm separated, my perception is skewed. And it was so bad because if you've ever been around chicken ranches, there's a lot of flies and it smells really bad. And this is where I'm living now, and I don't shower. And I haven't eaten. You remember when Top Ramen was 10 for $1? I couldn't buy one. And that's where my life had been, right? And I'm way underweight. My right arm is, I crossed the line somewhere. I believe in our singleness of purpose, but somewhere along the line, I crossed the line too, and I started sticking a needle in my arm. And my right arm is the biggest part of my body because it's got staph infection, and I can't go to the doctor, and I'm dying. And at night, when the sun would go down, the rats would crawl all over me, and the fleas and the flies, and I was living in filth, and that's where I ended up. Because I'm not drinking. You see, I'm not drinking. My life is supposed to get better when I'm not drinking. But see, I didn't have no solution in my life. I didn't have you guys. I was really rigorously working step none. And, and that's what happens to us when we don't do anything, right? We can quit drinking, and if we don't enlarge our spiritual life through sacrifice and working with others, we're in trouble. And I wasn't doing none of those things. And I got to tell you, I didn't even care when the rats were crawling on me anymore. I didn't. It was almost like a welcome, take me, And if you've ever smelled dead rats, it's awful. You'll never forget it. So, I did what any 50-year-old man would do. I called Mommy. And, I said, Mom, I'm dying. I'm dying. I need help. I don't know what to do. Everybody's gone in my life. And she sent me a bus ticket. And it's a long ways from San Diego or Escondido to Rapid City, South Dakota. It'd take 3.5 days. And boy, you're sick, you're hungry. And I'd like to say that that was the end of it for me, but it wasn't. I had to go back to California one more time and get another bus ticket home. During this time, when I first was living in Rapid City, I used to teach martial arts, and I loved teaching martial arts. It was a big part of my life. I loved every part of it. I loved being a teacher. I loved my classes. I had 3 schools that I ran. And anyway, I went on and drunk, and 6 weeks later, I ended up in Pierce, South Dakota. I don't know why I would want to go there. I don't know. But, and I woke up in a motel room not knowing where I'd been and what I'd done. And, when I went back to my classes, it was like they didn't even know who I was. The only reason I tell that story is because when I got back to Rapid, I got hooked up with the guy that used to teach martial arts with me, and his name's Al. And anyway, he is the her of the Harley-Davidson dealership, and I asked him, man, I need a job bad. I'm staying with my mom and her husband, and I said, I need a job. And I had gone to motorcycle school and all that. But anyway, so he gave me a job, and weird things would happen because, I would do good, and then I would go to lunch, and I wouldn't come back for 2 weeks. And, and my boss would say to me, what is the matter with you? What is the matter with you? We're giving you a chance here. I mean, what is the matter with you? And one more time, I had to go on a run, right? And one more time, I'm absent, and I'm separated from everybody else. I'd taken my old newcomer car. I wasn't a newcomer yet, but It looked like a newcomer car. And I hit this dip in the road, right? And it took out my oil pan, and I ended up at this motel, and my car leaked out 5 gallons of oil on the parking lot. And I'm hiding in the room and that. And, I know that I got to do something with the oil in the road. So I call my mom again, and she's living out at the lake, and her husband's dying of cancer. And all I can think about is me, right? All I can think about is me. And I say, Mom, you got to bring me some money. You got to bring me some money. And I con my mom out of money one more time. And she comes in there, and I meet her across the street. And she said, why, Steve? Why? What is the matter with you? What is going on? And I said, don't lecture me. Just give me the money. Don't lecture me. And that was it. I saw that tear one more time roll out of my mom's face and down her cheek. And that was the time when God paralyzed the liar in me just long enough to see a little bit of truth about the people that I've been harming my whole life, right? And I showed up at you guys' door one more time because I'd been here before and I knew about the solution. My dad had been in AA for a long time, and he never ever said, Steve, you need to go do that. He never said it. He lived it. And I'm grateful for that. All those things that I said I was never going to do, that I watched my dad do, I did that and way worse. And I came in here and I had a new willingness. Something was different. I had lost everything again. And my boss at work, he might have been one of us, but I think he was just a heavy drinker. But he made me go to meetings, and every time I went to a meeting, I had to get something signed. And, that's what it took. That's what it took. And I met somebody there that I really liked what he was saying at the meetings, and I really thought that maybe he had been through the book and knew what he was doing. So I asked him to be my sponsor. And I liked everything he had to say right up to that point. Because after that, things shifted, you know what I mean? And it wasn't in a good way. And I said, and he wanted me to do these things that I don't want to do. I said, Scott, I'll work these steps. I'll work these things. I'll do this stuff as soon as I get rid of some of these problems. When I get rid of these problems, then I'll be ready. I'll be ready. And Scott said to me, he said, Steve, why don't we focus on the solution instead of the problem? And that was the beginning of that. And I'm grateful for that today. There were so many things that happened in my life that turned me the other way. And I love the way that the rest of the speakers have got us up to this point. And I so appreciate everything that you spoke about. And you took a lot of the lines that I was going to say. So anyway. Certainly my life was unmanageable by me, and I am powerless over alcohol. Whenever I put that into my system, something happens to me. And when I don't put it in my system, something happens to me. And I get crazy, okay? I can't emphasize that enough, because the things that I'm about to share with you guys are the things I'm not proud of, but the things that I did. It's not who I am, it's the things that I did. But it kept me in shame and guilt for a long time. And it was just like, how could I do that? When I got to that fourth column, and I looked at those things, where was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid? And I really had to take a hard look at that. And I had to look at those resentments. And of course, the first one on that resentment list was Mandy, right? How could she have me arrested for something that I didn't do? But my life was nuts. I mean, it wasn't a far stretch to think that I might do something like that because I'm crazy, right? But looking at that fourth step, looking at those things, I got to see the monster, okay? When we were living in Phoenix, when I was going to motorcycle school, and I'm crazy because I'm not drinking, I'm that guy that's nuts, right? I'm that guy. And I remember Mandy came home and she had Blake in her arms, my son, and he was 2 years old. And I'm crazy. I'm filled with rage. I'm just nuts. And I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm like a ticking time bomb all the time. And I don't know how to handle it. And I don't know that it's because I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, and I have untreated alcoholism. That's what's wrong with me. But I don't know that. And I look at that fourth column and I see, and when Don talked about we were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle, you cannot go into your amends process unless you have looked at it from an entirely different angle. Because if we do it, we're still looking at it the same way, right? And that doesn't work. But anyway, I got to see the monster. When Mandy was walking in the house with my infant son in her arms, I lost it. And I got her up against the wall and I got a butcher knife up against her throat. And she's on her tippy toes. And I see that fright in her eyes. And she can't get up high enough to get away from me. And I'm going to kill her because I'm standing at that edge, right? I'm standing at that edge because I'm insane. And I got to see all those times when I had her on the floor choking her out. And all she did was love me. And she loved our son. And yet I'm that monster. I'm that guy. And I'm not proud of that stuff. We don't harm God's kids. There were so many people that I owed amends to, and there were so many people that I harmed. There were so many people that I choked out. There were so many people that I did those things to, and I'm nuts. So, sharing those things in a fifth step, sharing all those people that I had harmed, and I remember a while ago when I heard Don speak one time, and, he said, made a list of all the people we had harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. We did it when we took inventory, and I remember Don saying, Jesus, and that was so true because, those people were on my list, right? And the very first person on my list was Mandy because I saw the damage that I've done. And, we hear a lot of times about living amends and all that, and yes, I agree we have to live differently. And this is just my opinion, but the book says we make direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. That's my opinion for the day. So, I'm working the steps, I'm doing the deal, and I walk into my home group one day, and out of the blue, my friend Jerry, he walks up to me and he says, Steve, the early risers got together and we bought you a plane ticket to go to California to go see your kids. And see, I'm not used to kindness like that, right? I'm not used to people, because I'm a taker. I'll steal your dope and then help you look for it. You know what I mean? I'm that guy. So it wasn't a coincidence, if you will, that I'm at the ninth step right when, I'm going to fly out of here. And I had to ride with a guy from Rapid City to Denver, 6-7 hours, with a guy that I don't like from AA. You know what I mean? And you guys do that to me all the time. I don't like somebody, you put me next to him. You know what I mean? And it's just weird like that. So, in the 12 and 12, it talks about, the people that we're willing to make amends to, the people that we, maybe someday we'll be willing to make amends to, and the ones we probably never do, right? My sponsor never got that memo. He apparently didn't read that part because the very first one that we needed to do was Mandy, right? And I went to his house, and I'll have to admit, Scott makes a pretty good girl. He didn't put on a dress, but I'm sure he would have if I'd asked him. But and we went through all that stuff, right? We went through it, and we knew it was going to be difficult, and we knew it was going to be hard because, my goodness, right? It was awful. And I got to tell you, If you're not scared going into your amends, something's wrong. Because I was scared to death. And anyway, I flew to California. And, you know, my previous spouse that had my daughter, my new husband-in-law from her picked me up at the airport and took me to the house that I built and took me to the TV that I bought. And we got to watch their wedding video on my recorder. And but anyway, from there, it's funny how things work out, isn't it? So from there, I got to go see about making my amends to Mandy. And I met her in the parking lot at a grocery store in Ramona, California. And I said, you know, I believe I've harmed you. I know I've harmed you. I want you to know that I was wrong. And before I could get done, you know, I can't say from the podium what she said to me, but it's physically impossible for me to do that. And there was all kinds of FUs, and because I don't believe we cussed at the podium. But it was ugly. It was awful. And that was my first amends, right? And it was terrible. And my son is standing there, and he's 6, 8 years old at the time, and he's bawling. He's just bawling, and I'm crying. And Mandy's not crying. And I'm looking at Blake, and Mandy says, he'll be fine when you get the hell out of here. And it's just like, oh. Because I love my son. I love Mandy. I do. And I can't control my emotional natures, right? Because I'm nuts, and my garbage can is full. And the only way that we get through that is by this process that we do called the 12 steps. I remember getting on the phone right after that, and I said, Scott, if this is the way the amends process is, please sign me up for some more of this. I mean, this is just great, you know. And he said, Steve, did you make the amends? Did you try to make the amends? I said, yes. And he said, then quit playing God and get out of the results part. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to call every week at the same time, okay? I want you to call. And I did that. You know, I did a lot of other amends while I was in California. It seemed like every time I went around the corner, there was somebody else that I needed to make an amends to. But there was nothing like that first one. And, you know, I knew in my heart that I had harmed a lot of people. You know, a lot of times when we're doing our 8-step list, and this probably happens with you guys, it happens with my guys, I probably did it, is that, you know, you make the list and first person on the list is me, right? And what I tell my sponsees is that, you know, you can be on the list. I'm sure you did cause yourself great harm. I'm positive of that. But let's take it from the first and let's put it on the bottom, okay? Trust me on this. Let's just put it on the bottom, because the best amends you can make to yourself is to clean up your junk, is to clean up your mess, is to make your amends to all these other people, and then you get free. I love it when we were talking earlier about how free do you want to be, because that was, my sponsor was drilling that into my head. How free do you want to be, Steve? While I was there, the lady that took care of me a lot, my first spouse's mom, she took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. She fed me. She gave me a place to sleep and all that. I was able to make my amends to her and tell her, you know, how wrong I was, and I shouldn't have treated you that way, and I took advantage of your kindness. And, you know, I came home. I made amends to my daughter, made amends to my son. Anyway, I came home, and I hadn't been home but a little while, and I got a call from California from Sharon, the lady that I was talking about, and she had gotten cancer. And she said, Steve, I just wanted to call and let you know that I love you. And she died 3 days later. And what was weird about it was that she died on my daughter's birthday. And my daughter and her were very close. And she took care of my daughter when I couldn't or wouldn't. Anyway, I come back to South Dakota. I'm doing the deal. I'm trying to sponsor guys. Losing a few sponsees when I take them to detox, but anyway, 2 years later, right? I get a call, and it's my daughter, Crystal. And she says, Dad, Mandy says we can come to South Dakota now, Dad. So sometimes when we do our amends, things don't happen right away because God needs time to do things on the other end, right? But she said, yeah, Mandy says we can come to South Dakota and see you, Dad. And right away I'm ecstatic, and then all of a sudden I'm full of fear, right? I'm full of fear because I have no money. I have no money at all. As a matter of fact, during this process, every time the phone would ring at work, and they'd say, Steve, you got another phone call, it was another debt collector, right? And I'm way in debt. There's no way that I can get my kids here. There's no way. My sponsor tells me that you make your financial amends, you do what you need to do, you take care of that stuff. And, there was days in the winter, because I was a flat rate mechanic, where, in the wintertime we get pretty slow at the Harley shop. And, there were weeks where every 2 weeks I was bringing home $230 because they're taking everything else for my financial amends. Everything else, it's going. And, I can't do nothing. Anyway, so I got this call from Crystal. And it wasn't but a few days after that I get a call on my phone, and it's the general manager where I work. And I go up there, he said, can you please come up to my office? And I say, sure, I'll be up right away. You know what happens when we get a call from the general manager, we're fired, whatever, they found out, And I go up there, and it's the general manager and one of the owners is sitting there. And you remember, I told you, I'm the guy that goes to lunch and leaves, and I'm gone for 2 weeks, right? But I'm doing the deal. And anyway, I go up there and I sit down, and I'm ready for the bad news, and they say, Steve, the owners have decided that we're going to fly your kids here from California. And, they did that for 5 years. And I'm paying my amends, And every time they would come, they would give me $300 cash, and they would take me to the Sam's Club and buy me groceries for my children. How does that happen? This thing works. It's not easy paying back your stuff. It's not like it's, oh, sign me up for some more of that. But it was kind of weird because on my 10th AA birthday, 10 years, 2 weeks, I made my final payment. And during that time, 5 years earlier, we got a new accountant at work. And he come out and said, Steve, can I talk to you a minute? I said, sure. He says, do you know that you've been paying double of what you're supposed to be paying? And you've been paying that for the last 5 years? I said, no, I didn't know that. He said, would you like to change it to what you want to do, what it should be? And I thought about that for a minute, and it was like, no, I don't want to change it. Because, see, I agreed that I was going to get in the wheelbarrow, right? And I'm going to trust God. And, that's what happens. It's not easy making our financial amends. It's not easy to go out to the people that we've harmed and say, look, I was wrong. 10 years, 2 weeks, I made my final payment, and then they started sending me money back, too, because I'd overpaid. And, it's like, okay. But we get to get free, right? We get to get free of this stuff. There's so many things that I want to share. My life has been something else. I went to the pits of hell, and you guys brought me back to life. And I thank you for that. Those things that happened in my life, all that stuff that I did, all the people that I harmed, I got to tell you, that's why we say, and that's why I had read what we read today, that, that painful past can be of infinite value to others, right? That when we say, you can get out of this, you can do it, come with me, come with me. If you're a newcomer, come with us. Be a leaper, don't be afraid. Come with us, your life will change, okay? One of those years, I took my kids up to Mystic Minor. It's a place that we go inner tubing. And I don't know why I'm telling this story, but it was very powerful in my life. And I was there with Judith and her nieces, and we were just having a great time. My kids were there, my mom was there, and we're going down the inner tube thing, and we're just having a great time. And there's hundreds of people there. There's hundreds of people there. And the snow is just flickering down, just, sparkly and stuff. And it was just like, and there was no sound. There was no sound. And I was enveloped by this overcoming feeling of love. And it was like a whisper from God saying, it's okay now. It's okay. Your kids are here. And I got to tell you, it was powerful. It was powerful. And I didn't know what that was for a long time. And I talked to other people, and they said, that was God whispering to you, Steve, letting you know it's okay. You've had a lot of other laughter this morning and that yesterday and my talk hasn't been a lot of laughter, right? There's been a lot of sadness in it, but I got to tell you, there's lots of joy in it too. Lots of joy. We get to do these things. We get to show up, right? We get to be a part of this stuff. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been separated for so long, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. But through good sponsorship, great sponsorship, and you guys, you brought me back to life. And you showed me a path that, when I was younger, my mom remarried, and I just loved my stepdad because my dad wasn't around. And I didn't know that he had gotten sober. But anyway, we owned a restaurant on 8th Street in Rapid City, which is Mount Rushmore Road. And, I love my stepdad. And this was at a Ramada Inn, and I see my stepdad's car parked down there, right? And I said, wow, that's weird, down in front of a room. And I don't know why, but I went and opened the door, and my stepdad's in bed with our hostess of the restaurant. And I remember because we were very religious. We went to church 8 times a week, and we were casting out demons, and we were doing all kinds of things, right? And I remember saying, if that's what this God thing's about, I don't never want nothing to do with it again, ever, because you hurt my mom. And I lived that way for a long time. Anyway, when I came back here and I started trying to go back to church and do all those things, and finally the elders of the church, they said, Steve, can we talk to you for a second? Sure. So I went over there and they said, Steve, this really isn't the Bible as Steve sees it, and maybe you shouldn't come here anymore. Really, it's bad when you get kicked out of church, you know what I mean? And I'm in recovery, I'm doing the deal and that, and I'm making sure that they know where they're wrong. And I can't get free of it, right? I can't get free of it. And I'm just nuts. And I keep calling my sponsor and whining about these things and all that. And he keeps saying, make your amends to your stepdad. Make your amends to your stepdad. And I'm balking because he hurt me. He hurt my family. What, why do I have to make amends to him? And I finally came to a place of willingness, and I call him, and he's driving in Montana, and I say, Phil, I wasn't the best stepson I could have been. I want you to know that I was wrong. And he had to pull over on the side of the road because he's crying and I'm crying. And in the big book where it says, as soon as we set aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commence to get results. And that as soon as happened right then. It was just, and I was able to go back to church and learn. And we're running out of time. So, I'm making my amends. I'm doing a part of the deal. Anyway, my mom, I was able to make amends to my mom because she really suffered through all my shenanigans. And I was able to make amends to my little brother, Stan. And my little brother, Stan, had a rough go of it. Ever since my dad's alcoholism, when he was 2, my little brother Stan just had lots of difficulties, and he was very insecure, and he was just separated from the beginning. And anyway, I'd made my amends to my mom, and my Uncle Bobby, who lives up here in Bismarck, he had throat cancer from smoking, and he couldn't talk on the phone because you couldn't hear him and that. And I brought my mom up here to see her brother, and we're at my friend Judah's house, and we're getting ready to go with my uncles and see him. He's got Alzheimer's, and he's in bad shape. And the phone rings, and it's my other brother from Rapid, and he said, Steve, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah. What's up? And he said, our brother Stan has just been murdered. He got shot in the back and hit in the head because of this disease. And my mom was in the shower. And she got out of the shower and she went in the room, and I, first of all, I called my sponsor. And I knocked on the door. I said, Mom, are you dressed? And she said, no. What's up? Is there something wrong? And I said, yes. And she said, it's Stan, isn't it? And she just started screaming. I said, yeah, it's Stan. He's gone, Mom. And because of this disease of separation, he had separated himself so much, and my mom just always loved him so much. He would come off the mountain every Thanksgiving and spend time until after New Year's with my mom, and she just loved that time. And he was in the grips of this thing, but my mom would just love him, and it used to just make me mad because I've got recovery now, and I'm self-righteous, and I'm, all those things, right? And I'm looking down on my brother that suffers from the same thing that I do, and all my mom wants to do is love him because she knows the pain that he has in his life, right? And she just wants to love him. And anyway, I got to tell you, that was a rough time. That was a rough time. And the only reason I bring this up because if you're balking at your amends because you're afraid, we don't know if people are going to be there tomorrow. And it's important that we take care of this stuff right now, okay? You don't run out and make your amends. You do the other steps first, right? But we do get out there and make our amends and clean up our junk. Anyway, I got to ride back to Rapid City with my mom, 5 hours, her gripping my hand and crying, and we're both crying. And it's a terrible deal, right? But because of Alcoholics Anonymous, but because of these steps, because of the amends process, I got to be there for my mom. And when we got here, you know who was the first person at my mom's house? My friend Dave, who's sitting right back there. And that's what you guys do. You suit up and you show up. And my friend Dave has lost a couple kids himself, and he was there to share with my mom that pain. That's what we do. We get to. You guys filled the room at the funeral. You guys did. And it was, it was something to behold. When my mom's husband, Bill, when his cancer got so bad, we had to move him in from Sheridan Lake into Rapid City because they couldn't come into the doctor all the time. And I was newly in sobriety, and they had to move, and they had a lot of stuff because they'd lived there for a long time. And on that Saturday, you guys showed up with 17 trucks, trailers, all those things. And when we loaded the last thing in the last truck, it was perfect. And we went through town. There was never a red light that separated us. We all went through town. It was like God was running the lights, you know what I mean? And it was amazing. And again, you guys stepped into action, right? You stepped into action and you showed what you do. You suit up and you show up. And they, still to this day, Bill's gone now. He died of his cancer. But my mom, whenever we talk about that story, she has those tears running down her face because she can't believe the kindness from people that she doesn't even know. And she's so grateful to you guys for what you've done with me. See, I don't have the power to change that, right? It's just about time to close. You know, the thing about this is that we get to be at our post. We get to be at our post. And the way that we do that is by cleaning away the junk that blocks us. When my garbage can is full, all I can think about is me, and something comes along and tips me over, right? But when we empty this stuff out, when we get rid of the stuff that blocks us from the power, something happens. Something happens where we don't have the power, right? I have a sponsee right now. His name is Chris. And Chris is 36 years old. And Chris is dying of cancer. And a while back, I made a mistake. And I broke Chris's anonymity with Chris's dad, and I talked to him about his drinking and that. And it really made Chris mad. And it was kind of a separation there between us, and I'm his sponsor, and I had to make my amends to Chris. And anyway, Chris has got moments, maybe days at the most, to live. And the other day I was over there, and this is hard to do. Anyway, I went over there and I've been reading to him because his mom says, she said that she couldn't read to him because every time that she tries to read to him, she just breaks out and can't do it. And so I said I would agree to reading Jesus Calling to him because that's what she wanted me to read. And I did that. And, every time Chris would be out, not coherent, and I'd read that to him, all of a sudden he'd start moving his arm. And pretty soon he'd try to sit up and his eyes would open. And there's a power that's way beyond us, right? There's a power here. And what I did was I laid my head on his really bony shoulder and I said, Chris, buddy, I love you. And he tried to lift his arms, and he can't because he's too weak. He's 6'4" and he weighs 130 pounds now, you know. And he couldn't lift up his arms. And I could tell that's what he wanted to do, so I grabbed his arms and I put him around me, and he tried to pull me into him. And he said, "Steve, I love you too." And that's the thing that we get to do here, right? We get to be at our posts. We get to do these things. And we get to show up because people showed up for us. And the amends process makes that possible, right? It makes that possible. Don't balk at it. We walk through the fear in here. Whenever there's fear, we walk through it. We have our sponsors and the rest of the people in these rooms pushing us at the small of our back. Just walk through it. The other day, the early risers, they got a card together for Chris, and they all wrote on it. And they wrote all the things that we write to people that are going to take their light into the other room, right? And, you know, at this point, Chris is nonverbal. He can't talk no more. And I read all those things to him, and he opened his eyes. And I said, "Chris, did you hear that? If you heard that, just move your eyes, buddy." And he moved his eyes. See, I don't know about all this other stuff. I don't know about, you know, but I tell you, there's a power in these rooms, and I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but did you feel the pull this weekend? Did you feel the pull? That's God. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what we do here. We help each other. We stand shoulder to shoulder, and we walk this together. Thank you so much for not giving me my life back. Thank you so much for showing me a God that I neither can define or comprehend. Thank you for having patience. Thank you for having love. I think I'm about out of gas. Thank you, guys.